And I'm going to officially kick us off. So welcome aboard, everyone. Happy end of semester. Friday, which is for most of us either the last day of instruction or the last day of finals or something like that. So it's kind of a big, exciting day. And the fact that you all decided to spend this big, exciting afternoon with us just really touches my heart in ways that I cannot express in words. Thank you so much for being here today. You are all so awesome. We're going to talk a little bit about narrative tutoring today. And when I say we, I don't mean me. My name is Crystal. I'm the director of the Tutoring Center at Pierce College. And I'm also a coordinator for 3CSN. That is the organization that, that funds this and helps us run these and hold these. One of the things that we do is we facilitate these workshops by ourselves, but another big thing that we do is we encourage you all, the field, the experts, the awesome folks out there, to come and show us your stuff. And so Niko from Grossmont is a wonderful example of somebody who's always willing to step up and show us what he's got. So I want to thank Niko for being here today to tell us a little bit about a technique that he uses and is used at Grossmont College called narrative tutoring. So I'm going to go through some introductory slides and then I'm going to turn it over to him. So if you haven't already done so, please find the chat and tell us your name, your college, and your role. Hey, Ellen, good to see you. We see Pierce College up there. It's great to see all the different colleges that are here. So please let us know who's representing today. Again, today our presenter will be Niko, who's a learning assistant supervisor at Grossmont College. We're going to have a couple of goals for today. We're going to talk about kind of the connection between literary theory and tutoring. That's going to be really rad. We're going to understand the role that we play in our students' lives. We're going to learn how to personalize that tutoring a little bit. And we are also going to practice some narrative tutoring in small groups. So this is scheduled for 1 hour, right? So that sort of like, that'll cover the basics and that'll go from 3 to 4. But we're going to hang out from 4 to 4:30. So if you want to stay, talk, discuss, you know, chat through examples, you are very, very welcome to stay from 4 to 4:30. But 4 o'clock will be our trolley stop off. So if you got to go then, that's cool. If you can stay, that would be neat too. The way this is going to work is we're all going to start muted, but we're going to have like all kinds of roundtable discussions and stuff. So you're going to unmute yourself at some point. So if you want to discuss or you want to share something or you have a question, you can type it in the chat. You can raise your little Zoom hand, which I'll show you how to do in a second, and we'll call on you. But if you can't find that Zoom hand, you can just put a 1 in the chat and we will call on you that way. I will be monitoring the chat, so I'll be looking for questions from you, and I'll let Niko know if somebody has a question, he doesn't see it. So all of this action happens in the taskbar at the bottom of your screen. There's a chat button there, so click on that little chat button, tell us your name, your college, and your role. If you want to raise your little blue hand, so you're going to find the participants button, click that, and that'll bring up a panel on the side, and then you're just going to find a little blue hand, so you're going to click it, and that'll raise your hand. So you click it again, and it lowers it. If you want to practice raising your blue hand right now, I won't call on you, but later on, if you raise your blue hand, I will call on you. And then, of course, when you're in a breakout room or after you've raised your blue hand, we'll ask you to unmute yourself. So you're just going to click on that little microphone to unmute yourself, click it again to mute yourself again. And then finally, we just kind of want to wrap our arms around what we're doing today and set some community agreements so that we can work best together today. So just kind of wrap your mind around the task. This is going to involve a lot of active participation, including breakout rooms. So do please be present. We're going to do some small group discussions, and we'll tell you before we go into a breakout room, just in case you have to go or you're doing 12 different things right now and you can't pay attention to the breakout room. If you have to step away to grab the mail, make a sandwich, join another meeting, I know some of you are in too. It's okay, no shame, we all do it. Just let us know so we don't put you in a breakout room and leave somebody else alone, okay? Just, you know, be ready to share those solutions, those narratives, those successes, ask your questions. And when other people ask questions, offer solutions to barriers and express confusion, let's all just give each other a little bit of love, because, you know, learning takes risk, and risk takes trust, and trust takes kindness. So let's just be nice to each other today. It's been a hard year. So with that, I would love to turn it over to Niko, so I'm going to stop sharing. And then Niko can pull up his screen and he's going to take it away from there. If you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat.
All right, does everyone hear me okay? Well,
Yes.
I'm really enjoying seeing so many familiar faces. My extended family is here today, so I appreciate you all coming out. We're going to talk about narrative tutoring, which is a sort of unique concept, and I'm going to explain a little bit about the backstory here. Once upon a time, some medical professionals from Columbia University in New York got together and they realized that a lot of things weren't working.
I knew you.
And so they started talking about how they can maybe help their patients better. And what they decided to do is get together with some people from literature, from psychology, and some other practices. And they wanted to find out maybe there was a better way to work with people. So they ended up creating a practice called narrative medicine that they've been working on since 2009. And anyone who is on their track to the medical profession could study this if you transfer to Columbia. But today, we're going to talk about this in narrative tutoring, where we're going to take those approaches and practices that they worked on and talk about how it applies to our education system. So this may seem familiar, but like medical practitioners, we also have to do diagnoses for our students, and we often have limited information to do so. So those critical few moments of the session where you first start trying to get to know the student and figure out what they want to work on for today is a critical time for us. Our system of education struggles in the same way that the healthcare system does, in that we are not providing enough care to our students. Many students are struggling with trauma and issues from past experiences. And so we want to try and show them the care they need to try and make up for some of the issues they might be dealing with. And for many people, this means they feel like they don't belong in education. When they think about their identity and their life story, education doesn't seem to be the right track for them. So we want to help them kind of understand that they do have a place in education. So some of the things we hope to do by using a narrative tutoring approach is we hope to help students have a stronger learner identity, to see themselves as successful students, mathematicians, writers, that this is their success story that they're building. This will make them more resilient to hardship. So when they stumble, they see that as just a small portion of their overall story and understand that they might be in the middle of a redemption arc and they're on their way. And then hopefully all this will help them perform better in class and college and be more successful so they can reach their goals. So here's the general agenda we're working with today. We're going to start by talking about our protagonist. We're going to review some narrative structures. We're going to talk about the technique of close reading. And then we're going to practice and see if we can grasp the nature of narrative tutoring today. So our protagonist is going to be our students. We want to see them as the main character of the stories we're telling, and that we play a supporting role in helping them achieve their goals. We can do that by taking a literary level of interest. And so what I mean by that is that we're going to really focus on them as a deep, complex subject that we need to analyze and understand, and that way we can personalize the experience with them. So we need to focus our attention on the student and not on ourselves. There's a small letting go of ego and focusing on someone else. That when we start the tutoring session, it's really about them more than it's about us. We're going to encourage them to take control of their story as a narrator, that they are the active agent in their own education. And so that comes with responsibility and opportunity. we're going to remember that they have a past, present, and future that are important to their education. Sometimes when we see a student, it might seem like we're working with them in a bubble, but they have previous experiences and understanding of the knowledge they're working with, and we want to make sure that's part of their overall story going forward. They're trying to get somewhere, and that we need to help get them there. And so when they have a small obstacle, we want to remind them that this is part of their larger success story. When someone makes a mistake or fails a test, or they have some kind of educational obstacle, it can cause a moment of identity crisis that makes them think, maybe this isn't for me, maybe I'm not actually good at this. And we want to help them understand that this is just all part of a longer process, that all great writers have rough first drafts. And so they should keep working because this is a natural part of progressing. And when we think about the student as the protagonist, we understand that we play a role in their success story. So when we are tutoring students, they're also helping transform us. It's a mutual exchange where we're both learning together. So if we know who our protagonist is, then we must have a supporting cast, because no hero stands alone. And so that supporting cast includes all of you. And it also includes some other resources around students. So you can post in the chat or raise your hand if you'd like. What are some resources the student has to help them succeed in their supporting cast? Carlos, do you want to share?
Just go ahead and unmute yourself, Carlos.
Wow, I said so much. Now I forget what I said. No, listen, I try to encourage the student, if there's an opportunity for them to work with fellow students. Now it's difficult these days because we're on virtual environment, but even so, if they have an opportunity to work in a small team with other students, I ask them to look at that as a very doable resource, or a very beneficial resource that they have right at hand, because sometimes it's very difficult to even set up an appointment with the professor. So that's one of the resources that I always mention.
I think that's a great point about accessing resources, right? Is that sometimes it's hard to get to the resources they need, but the nice part is that there's so many different kinds of resources. I think a lot of times we feel like we have to do it all on our own, or when the professor is meeting with a student in office hours, they feel like they have to do it all on their own. So it can be kind of relieving to remember that there's a network around the student. You know, if they can't get access to their professor, maybe they can get access to a tutor or a counselor or a friend or a classmate. I'm just looking through the chat a little bit as well. So I'm seeing tutors, classmates, librarians, the internet, instructors, peers, tip sheets. So you can even help them find resources or make resources that they can carry forward. So we can see it's a large community that envelops the student. So when we think of them as the protagonist, it's a rich world they live in where there's a lot of options to get them help. Now, how about for you? Your tutors who are working to help students, what are some resources that you have to help you succeed?
Why am I still zooming? なんだこりゃ。
Mako, do you want to share some experience?
I'm trying to come in as me, myself, mate. But I don't know how. No matter what, I'm Zoe.
Zoe's a good name. Just go with it for today.
I'm gonna read
We'll know
it
you're Micah.
because I was back and forth. So may I read again and think about it?
Of course, I didn't mean to put you on the spot. Does anyone want to share a resource that helps you succeed as tutors? Ready to kick us off, Carlos?
Right. So a couple of times I've had an opportunity to go to the teacher who is teaching the subject that the student coming to me has some difficulty with, just to better understand how the subject is being presented. I've done that a couple of times. I think it has helped me to better understand what the student is bringing to table and be able to then have a more productive session with the student. I really don't recommend that be done all the time because teachers, especially these days with the virtual environment, are pretty busy. And when they have time, they want to dedicate that time to the students. But in a couple of cases, I have been able to steal about 10 minutes and better understand the material. And I think I've been able to provide a more productive session for the student.
Can I just say, as a faculty member, I've really appreciated when tutors have reached out to me. I know that may not be always the policy, depending on the center that you're working at or the discipline, but I've often made suggestions because I might know what, like, hey, this student really is struggling with this. Can you try to focus on that in your session, right? And sometimes having those two minds to kind of think about how can we best support this student can make those sessions more productive, more focused. And it also helps me understand what my students are struggling to do or struggling to understand. So having that, sometimes students won't say it, but tutors will come to me and say, they're really having trouble with this assignment prompt and understanding what you're looking for. And then I know I need to go back and rewrite it, right? And so I've actually really, as a faculty member, I appreciate you trying to protect our time, but I genuinely, you know, all the information I can get to help my students, or tutors help my students, I really appreciate and value.
Joe, do you want to chime in?
Can. Yeah, no, like I was just thinking about that, and like one of the resources I love using is other tutors to help out, and also one of my favorite resources is the person themselves, because they have all the resources that I'm going to be using. So I love to just rely on them. I give them extra things like online dictionaries, but yeah, the student themselves is a great resource.
Carlos, do you want to add on? Or is your hand still up from before?
No, I think did you hear what I said about tutor and faculty time? I thought I was muted.
Oh, no, we heard you. And Kiara responded.
Good, okay. Yeah. All right, good. Thank you.
Yeah, so a lot of people mentioned the chat as well. So your fellow tutors, you're part of a community at a college, and you're part of a larger community in California community colleges of other tutors that can help you out. You also have faculty who are invested in the students. You have staff and administrators. There's a lot of people around you that you can make use of and you should rely on to help you be more effective with students. A lot of these people are here to help and love to help. And if you haven't reached out before, maybe start looking into some of the resources you have at your college that might be able to help support you and the students. All right, so we'll talk a little bit now about narrative structures. So this is really where a little bit more of the sense of literary theory comes in. We've kind of, over time, realized that most stories have several patterns, to the point where almost every story can be categorized into a few of these. We're going to kind of review a few narrative structures that are very common and talk about how it applies to education. And so first, we're going to start with a structure that might be familiar to some of you, which is the tutoring cycle. So this is a popular way of approaching tutoring that a lot of people have variations of. if you have a similar version or if this looks familiar to you, could you raise your hand in the chat just so we can see how many people have seen this before? Oh, I can see the actual Zoe now. Awesome. So it looks like a lot of people are somewhat familiar with this process. There's a feeling of a beginning, middle, and an end. You know, it's this starting with the welcome and agenda, the guidance and reflection, and then planning moving forward. So you're somewhat familiar. Some people have different words for these steps, like review or metacognition or whatever it may be. So this is kind of familiar. So let's look at a different narrative structure. And this is called Freytag's pyramid. And this idea maps out how most stories proceed. That generally we start with some kind of exposition, which is backstory, or the status quo information, just how things are at the moment. There's the rising action where things begin to change, maybe obstacles show up, other resources are brought in. And then we hit the climax of the story where there's the final showdown or they save the day or whatever it might be. And then there's a little bit of a post period where there's a conclusion, a wrap up, we kind of put the bow on the story, and everyone feels good about the ending. This next one is called The Hero's Journey. So even further comparison there with the circular format. This one's a little bit more involved, and I would love to do a separate workshop all about the hero's journey, but we don't have that much time. So this one's heavily based in mythology. The idea that these mythological characters go on an adventure, they save the day, often there's some kind of revelation and transformation that happens in the middle, and then they return home successful after their journey. And then this is another kind of simple look at 3-act structure, which kind of addresses the idea that it's maybe not so linear or simple. So compared to Freytag's pyramid, where there's sort of just one narrative, the 3-act structure acknowledges that sometimes there's hiccups along the way or mini checkpoints as someone's progressing. This may feel a little familiar if you're starting a tutoring session and sometimes you have to take a step back or approach a different problem. So it kind of breaks up these ideas into a few different sections. So with those examples, which structure best fits your tutoring sessions? Freytag's pyramid, the hero's journey, or the 3-act structure? And if you want to post in the chat or raise your hand, you can give an example. I was getting a good laugh out of Cassandra's D&D comment. The Lord of the Rings, very relatable. I like a few people are saying the 3-act structure. It's resonating with a few of you. Depends on the length of time. Does anyone want to give an example really quick if you want to raise your hand? I didn't include it in the slide, but the hero's journey has the supernatural guide or mentor character, which I always feel like strongly relates to the tutor. You get to be the wise old wizard who gives the hero what they need. And I have the kind of second question there. Does anyone know of a movie or a book with an unusual narrative structure, something that doesn't fit neatly into these other 3? Joy Lucklow. Memento is definitely on my mind. Oh, wow, yeah, Eternal Sunshine. This is all an elaborate plot to get people to give movie recommendations. So I'll pick out Memento just because I'm more familiar with that one. If you haven't seen it, the basic premise is that the main character forgets anything that happens after a certain amount of time, and the whole story is told in reverse order. So you get to see 10 minutes, and then you see the previous 10 minutes, and you keep going backwards. I don't know if anyone has had a tutoring session that feels like that, but it might be the sense where you think you're starting on something, and then you realize, oh, actually, we need to start at an earlier topic before we even get to, if they want to talk about rhetoric, and you realize that maybe we don't even have the basis of rhetoric down, and then you realize maybe we don't even have the basis of the essay structure down, and you realize you're kind of building backwards to your end goal. Totally valid way to run a tutoring session. What you can do is when you watch a movie or read a book and you think about the structure of the story, keep in mind that that can be the structure of your tutoring sessions. So every story or movie you experience is another tool, another way of approaching the session. Yeah, they're trying to get ready for the final, but they don't remember chapter 1. That's great. We'll move on to the next technique, which is close reading. So close reading is the idea of having a deeper analysis and that you can get more meaning out of something by paying more attention to it. So one of the ways is that we talk about looking beneath the surface. Any story or movie you watch is like a person's personal life. They're so complex that we can't understand the whole of it just by a cursory conversation, just by exchanging a few words here and there. It really takes more to get to know everything around a person's decision-making, environment, their context. So we know that if we want to get to know our students, we're going to have to put more effort into analyzing what they're saying, where they're at, and see if we can find better ways to help them. So I have 4 basic elements that kind of show how to get beneath the surface. One is your attention, which sounds obvious, but paying deep attention to things beyond just what they're saying, how they're saying it, how they feel, do they look uncomfortable, do they have notes with them, or do they seem prepared? That takes a little bit extra attention. Then understanding their context. So this might include asking questions around the material instead of just about the material to understand maybe what else is going on in their life. Did they get in a car accident on the way there? Are they able to focus? Do they have a bad relationship with their professor and maybe there's something that needs mending? These are kind of contextual information that you may glean from what they're saying or you may have to ask to find out. Critical thinking is taking that extra step and taking all the information you're being presented and then try and find new information from it. And questioning is the way that you get access to that information. So generally, if you want to look beneath the surface during your tutoring session, you're going to be doing these 4 things. Does anyone have an example of a story where they had to look beneath the surface to understand it a little better?
I had an experience. My name's Carolyn, and I was a tutor for communication and public speaking for a long time. And a lot of them came in to do their first speech, and it would only be 2 minutes. And a lot of them, the first time talking to me, they'd break out in tears because they would pick a subject that had episodic memory, or it was close to their heart, or something about their grandmother or grandfather. And we always had to uncover that to relax them about any guilt, what they had. They just needed someone that they could share and someone to listen to them. And once that was out, then they could look at the outline and and look at it a little more intelligently, because all this emotion was bubbling up, and if you just go at it, you know, okay, here's your outline and speak this way and have an attention getter and if you start going there really cerebrally, you'll all of this is in them, and it paralyzes them. So listening, sometimes I spent just the first 2-3 tutoring sessions just allowing them to process it and to breathe, and once you hear it, it's almost visceral, like you'll just and then we can go on to the nerves of public speaking, and they're separate. The public speaking nerves are different than the emotions that's building up about something that happened traumatically in their life.
Not that we're therapists or we have to be therapists, but supposedly part of healing is being able to tell your story. And sometimes they may have a story that they've never actually told before. And so understanding that emotional load that's coming with it can be really critical to having a successful session. And I see a few book recommendations in the chat that I will add to my Christmas list here. Excellent, excellent. Okay. So another part of close reading is called being in conversation. This is sort of an expensive way of saying that you experience the story and change the meaning of it. In literary theory, when you say you're in conversation with the text, it is kind of implying that you are talking to the author through the text, that there's a back and forth experience. A lot of times we think of reading as being a one-way kind of transmission. You know, you're just taking in the words and you're experiencing it. But the way you experience is different for every person. So if I read a book, I may take a different meaning from the text than if someone else reads the book. That's part of the wonder of sharing stories and reading together, is to see how different people understand the same text. So I broke it down into 3 elements this time, saved you one, so it doesn't going to be 4 every time. But generally, it's going to be a personal, temporal, and mutual experience. So it's unique to you. It's important, the place and time. If I read a book that I read 10 years ago and I reread it now, it's going to be a different experience. And it's mutual. So there is a way that this is impacting both people. So right now, we're going to do a little meta moment. How am I in conversation with all of you as the presenter?
Can you clarify that question? What do you mean? Do you mean that we're giving feedback, and what's the narrative? Is it personal, temporal, or mutual? Is that what you mean? Can you clarify?
Sure. So everyone's attending this presentation. I'm sort of giving my text to all of you. Is this personal, temporal, and mutual? Are we in conversation, as they say in literary theory?
All of the above. Yes. Do you like the blue dress or the red dress? Yes.
And does Carlos, do you want to kind of explain?
Yeah, I'd like to echo what Carolyn just said. I think you're presenting a concept, you are explaining it, and then you are asking us how we would how we'd relate to that particular concept if we have experienced it, and how was that experience with ourselves. So yeah, I think you're touching on the personal, the temporal, because it has to do with today and how we are performing as teachers and tutors, and then the fact that it's mutual because this really pertains to all of us and what and how we do. That's how I see it.
Thank you, Carlos. He's a plant. I brought him just to feed me information. Yeah, so if you put yourself in my perspective for a moment, I'm presenting to all of you. So this is an experience for me. If I present this next week, it will be different. And this is personal because for me, it's personal in my experience and my growth as a presenter and as someone understanding this topic. And it's personal for all of you because you're all receiving this information in your own journeys. So for some of you, you may be focusing more on certain elements of what I'm presenting than others. Some of these things are going to ring true more for you than some of the other topics I'm bringing up. And then I'm getting your feedback, so we're going back and forth as well. Next time Carlos won't be here to answer my questions, and so I'll have to find someone else to fill in. So our next topic is unreliable narrators. You know, students are interesting, right? Sometimes people are not aware of what they're doing or what they're thinking or what they know. You may ask someone how they're feeling and they say, I'm feeling fine. Maybe you know they're not fine. Maybe you know they're more anxious than they're letting on or stressed. A lot of times when we meet with students, they may not realize the full scope of where they're at. They may say, I just need help with grammar. And you look at their essay and you go, you might need help with more than grammar. And that's okay, because sometimes we don't know what we're doing. It would be foolish to assume that the unreliable narrator is only happening to other people. We know that students are dealing with limited self-knowledge the same way that we are dealing with limited self-knowledge. So in the same way, we're trying to understand our current experience as best as we can. At the same time, they're trying to experience their story best they can. A simple example is like the eye trying to see itself. At most, we can see ourselves through the mirror, but we can't truly see ourselves the way other people do. So there's a little bit of a humility there in understanding that there's limitations to what we're going to perceive. And sometimes people believe things about themselves that are harmful and may not be true. So you'll have students who believe they're in a certain story. They think this is the story of me dropping out of college. This is the story of me failing chemistry. And that they're sort of on an inevitable track towards that end. They may think, I'm not a writer, I'm not a math person, whatever that means. And as long as they keep telling themselves these stories, they're going to keep believing in them and following that track. So sometimes when a student tells us where they're at, how they're feeling, and where they're going, this might be a moment for us to analyze, is this true? Is this really where they're going to be going? And how can we change it? So generally, we need to ask more questions to try to discern fact from fiction. When they say that they're not good at math, and then they solve a few problems, you might be thinking, well, you know, here's the evidence to your argument. Are you really bad at math, or are you just feeling like you're not confident? I've had a huge amount of students who are veterans tell me that they're not good at writing, and then knock out these amazing essays, and they just don't acknowledge the experience they have and think that they're not supposed to be writers. So we can ask more follow-up questions and understand their context and understand their experience. And then we need to reflect that back to them to show you actually are a good writer. You are a good mathematician. You are going to succeed in college. We can give them that confidence to rewrite their story.
Niko, that's a little powerful. It's not just in the limitations that they are applying themselves, but also they actually may know that they're okay at it, but fear being good at it or something. There's some kind of like dichotomy there I'm seeing.
If Susan's staying after 4 o'clock, we will talk more, because that's a great point. Making this presentation was hard because there's a lot of times where I had to narrow down what we were going to talk about into an hour, but there's really a lot more to unpack. And then, oh, Enha, do you want to?
Yeah, because sometimes their evaluation on whether they are good or bad depends on the scores they got. And for me, I don't trust the scores because for some reasons, maybe students are not able to do the test or for some reason they are not able to get the high score. Otherwise, they are good in other situation. So that's why some of them, they should not find the scores is the evaluation for them, especially in writing, because some of them need a kind of setting that make them feel comfortable so they are able to generate ideas and then produce the writing on papers. But when in the test atmosphere, they got confused, worried, and unable to achieve any. That's why.
Yeah, generally, if someone has a confidence problem, it may be based on experience. And so you can help change that from being their whole story to just a side note. You know, I've failed plenty of tests in my time, but I understand that that's just kind of part of my experience. And the last comment I want to make about an unreliable narrator is that sometimes this person can be uncooperative in a sense that they may challenge you and they may see things differently to the point where the tutoring session becomes difficult. I've had people who I tried to give advice on and they were just kind of like, no, that's not how it is. I'm like, oh, maybe your thesis could be a little bit more clear. And they're like, yeah, it's clear. You just don't get it. And I'm like, all right, well, you know, I'll take that to heart. It can be a little challenging. So one of the ways to get yourself out of that situation is to change the narrative. And you can do that by changing your role, taking a step back and maybe addressing where you're both at. Maybe if they're treating you like an antagonist, you need to change yourself into an ally. So if they're thinking that you're not on their side, find a way to show that you're there to help them and maybe identify a common problem between the two of you where you can change the perspective to say that you're working together. And that might be able to get them out of that uncooperative space. So really quick, if you have a book or movie or experience you want to share about an unreliable narrator, you can share it in the chat. Technically, you're allowed to keep posting Memento, but, you know, maybe mix it up. It's a good movie, I don't know. I don't want to spoil anything, but Fight Club is another example if you haven't, or Mr. Robot, but Emperor's New Groove, much cuter example. Thank you, Joe. All right, let's keep moving here. So we can get to the practice portion. And we'll quickly review the concept of open endings. The end of the tutoring session is not the end of the student's story. It's just the end of our time with the student. So it's good to acknowledge that this is just part of where they're headed. We don't have to be the whole experience. And we don't always save the day at the end. You know, sometimes you finish your session and you may feel like you didn't get what you wanted done, or maybe you could have done more, but just know that they're going to continue on. They're going to keep working. They're going to rely on other resources, and that it's not all on you to help make sure they succeed. And I think so we can move forward. I'll just say one example is Inception famously has an open ending about whether you feel like the token drops or not. If you watch that movie and you feel very frustrated at the end, you know, it might be trouble accepting an open ending. So let's get into the critics. I'm going to show just a few examples here of some narrative tutoring style phrases. Crystal, if you want to maybe post the guide in the chat so that they could have this as a reference.
Okay.
But you can just see a few of these examples. We're trying to dig for context, dig for history. What have you tried so far? What would you normally do? We're trying to understand their exposition, their backstory, kind of figure out where they've already been. Things like, is there anyone you go to for advice? Might be a way of finding out what their support network looks like. I was really excited, you know, showing your feelings and your reaction can help them understand their impact on other people. And then the last two kind of setting a high expectation for someone. So telling someone they can be a great writer or they can be a mathematician, they may have never heard that before. So you want to change their narrative. You want to tell them that they're on track to do something great or something they didn't believe in. Asking someone about graduate programs, for example, they may have never considered that they could be at that level. They may have thought that they're going to get their certificate and that's going to be it. But if they haven't even considered it, you may be the first person to bring it up. So we're going to be entering into breakout rooms. We're going to practice this by having a narrator, a reader, and an observer. So the narrator is going to tell a story about something that happened to them this week, hopefully something they maybe want some advice or feedback on. The reader is going to react and analyze and discuss with the narrator. And then the observers are going to watch both and see how they behave with each other. The observer can look for good questions, maybe misunderstandings or good analysis, and kind of give feedback after the round. So in order to determine who's who in each breakout room, if your birthday is coming up first, you're the narrator. If your birthday is coming up second, you're the reader, and otherwise you're going to be an observer. So if your birthday is December 23rd, that's tough, but you're going to go first. And then if your birthday is in March, you're going to be second. You're going to be the reader. So you're going to have a little bit to go through this experience, discuss with your group. If we have time, we might do another round, but that depends how much time we have. And we'll come back together to close out after you've all had a little bit of time to practice.
Okay, and just as a reminder, about to go into breakout rooms and one person is already hung up. Now, get that. If you don't want to go into a breakout room, tell me. You can go ahead and send me a little private chat. I'm Crystal. Otherwise, we have everybody set up in 3 rooms. There's 1 room with 4, but everybody else has 3. So if you don't have enough people, let me know. We'll figure it out. All right. So I'll open up the rooms and just accept your room. And then if you don't see if you don't see it, let me know and we'll figure you out. All right. I already see one person I'm going to need to move around. So again, if you need to not be in a breakout room, please do let me know now. So just make a couple of changes for folks who are telling me now that they can't be in breakout rooms. And I think we are ready to go. Oh, okay, one more person. Okay, so I'm opening up the rooms now. And if you really just can't go into a breakout room, just stay here and we'll figure it out. All right. So I'll see you soon. Bye-bye. All right. Now I do have one room without somebody. Niko, would you like to go into it? All right. Now, those of you who are left, just go ahead and look into the bottom taskbar and find the button that says breakout rooms. And then let me know if you don't see that. All right, Macy, you did not want to go in. Miko, you do not want to go in. Oh, Miko, are you back? Oh my God, are you back?
I am back.
Okay, great. All right, so let me go ahead and just go ahead and go into room 4. Do you see it there at the bottom? There we go. Okay. So, and then Saba, would you like to join a breakout room? No. Okay. All right. Sorry.
my group got cut off just a little bit at the end. We were like trying to squeeze every last second out of that. How was the experience for everyone? Did everyone feel like they got to try it out?
And Joe said that for once his birthday worked out for him on what the timing of it was. So
It was
I'm
last
glad. I
week,
know
so
that can be
I was
tough.
just like,
Yeah, it was a good experience. We find in my group of 3, we found that 2 of us have used very similar. We have used the practice principle in a very similar way, so that was good.
Where's my people? Oh, here he is.
So I think we're almost at time. Just to kind of be conscientious of the fact that some people may need to leave at 4. If you have time to stick around, we can talk about these questions, or we can talk about anything you'd like. But really quickly, I'm also going to show my final slides just to say that keep enjoying art, keep thinking about how art applies to tutoring, and look for inspiration everywhere you can. If you want to contact me with questions, my contact information is at the bottom. And then this is based on this enormous book, Principles and Practice of Narrative Medicine. It is a tough read, but if you ever do get into it, you can let me know. And if you want to look out for workshops in the spring, keep checking in with 3CSN, check in with Crystal or myself as well. We're hopefully going to be having more workshops and more opportunities for you to present or attend workshops. If you're interested in presenting, you can let us know as well, and we'd love to help you take that next step.
Cool.
So I know some of you need to leave. I hope most of you can stay, but if you have to leave before you go, could you just give Niko a little love in the chat, or give him a little clap hand or a little heart? I can't do it.
I stay.
Give reactions. Love to do this. Thank you all so much. And in the spring, we hope to have lots more of these. And we hope that not just Niko will come back, but a lot of other people will too. So be the next Niko. Email me, Crystal at 3CSN. Let me know what you'd like to share with the community, and we would just love to have you.